ever feel like you're like totally chained to your phone?
Yeah.
Like you're going to miss something huge if you don't check it right now?
Yeah.
I think we've all been there.
Oh, yeah.
So today we are going to do a deep dive into this feeling. It's called digital anxiety.
Okay.
And we're going to kind of uncover what it is,
Right.
why it feels like it's everywhere these days, and how we can, deal with this crazy connected world without it like taking over our lives,
It's a fascinating topic, right?
Yeah.
You have this incredible technology that connects us instantly with anyone, anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But then it also brings with it this like whole new set of anxieties.
Yeah, it's like a total paradox.
Totally.
Speaking of connections, did you know that like the average person spends over 7 hours a day on digital devices?
Wow.
That's wild, right?
It's like a full-time job.
It is. It is a full-time job.
Yeah.
So does that number surprise you at all?
It's definitely a wake-up call, I think, for a lot of people. And it really speaks to how deeply technology is like intertwined with our lives now. Right.
But what's important to understand is that like this constant engagement, this like digital stimulation, it really triggers all these effects in our brains.
Okay, so let's get into it.
Yeah.
First things first.
Sorry.
What exactly is digital anxiety?
Right.
It's got to be more than just like feeling overwhelmed by emails, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So we can define digital anxiety as this, like persistent feeling of unease and apprehension.
Okay.
And it really stems from like the overuse and reliance on digital technologies.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times this manifests as restlessness, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, even sleep disturbances.
Yeah, so it's like...
It's not just in our heads.
It's not just in our heads.
It's like our bodies are reacting to this constant digital bombardment.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, we're not saying that like all technology is bad.
Right.
But how does this always-on culture impact us in kind of like a negative way?
Well, think about it like this. Every notification, every message, every time your phone buzzes,
it triggers this release of dopamine in our brains.
Right.
And this dopamine loop, it's the same one that's involved in addictive behaviors. It's what keeps us hooked on those little bursts of digital stimulation.
Okay, so it's like it's like literally changing our brain chemistry.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It explains why it's like so hard to put the phone down, even when you know you should be doing something else.
Exactly. Exactly.
Let's talk about some specific things like in our everyday lives.
Okay.
That kind of fuel this digital anxiety.
Okay, sure.
Like what are the big culprits?
I think one of the biggest triggers is this expectation of constant connectivity.
Okay.
It's like we feel this pressure to respond immediately to emails, to texts, to calls. It's like we're always on call.
Right.
Even during our downtime.
Totally. Yeah.
Right.
And it's like we've lost the ability to just be without feeling like we have to share it online.
Right.
Or like document every single moment.
Exactly. And you know what? That actually ties into another major trigger, and it's FOMO.
Okay. The fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out. Social media plays a huge role here.
Oh, yeah.
It's like everyone's highlight reel, right? It's like you're constantly being bombarded with everyone else's best moments, and it makes us feel like we're not doing enough, experiencing enough, being enough.
Yeah. It's that comparison game.
The comparison game is so real.
It really is. I'll admit, I get sucked into that sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
It's exhausting.
Absolutely.
But what's interesting to me, at least, is that it's not even just like missing out on fun stuff.
Right. That's a good point. It's like
more than that.
It's like everything.
Yeah, because the constant influx of information, I'm talking news, articles, even like, supposedly helpful content, it can be so overwhelming. It's like we're drowning in information.
Right.
And it's hard to filter out what's actually important.
It's almost ironic that like we have access to more information than ever.
But it feels like we're more lost than ever.
It's a real paradox. And it can lead to this analysis paralysis where you're so overwhelmed by choices and information that you can't make a decision.
Right.
Totally.
You just freeze up. And then on top of all of that, there's this whole like the line between work life and personal life is so blurred.
Oh, yeah.
Especially with like so many people working remotely now.
Right.
It's like the boundaries have completely dissolved.
Totally.
Do you deal with that at all?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so hard to switch off when your office is just a few steps away. And then there's this expectation to always be available.
Right. Even after hours.
Or even after hours, yeah.
It's like work never ends.
It really does.
It's like that do not disturb button is like taunting us, touring us to press it.
Yeah.
So, okay, we've got this constant connectivity, FOMO, information overload, and then work-life blur.
It's a recipe for a disaster.
It's a recipe for, yeah, digital anxiety for sure.
Yeah.
But before we spiral,
Right.
let's take a breath and kind of shift gears a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
You're probably curious about, like, what are the solutions here?
I'm sure our listeners are.
I know I am, yeah.
Yeah. It is, a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But that whole thing you were saying about do not disturb, it's like we do have a choice, right? We're not just like stuck with digital anxiety.
Right.
We can actually do things to take back control.
Yeah.
And it's not about like,
Becoming a Luddite.
yeah, becoming a Luddite and swearing off all technology.
Right.
There are actual concrete things that we can do
Okay.
to like reclaim that sense of control.
I think that's what people want to hear.
Yeah.
Because, like, let's be real. We all rely on our devices so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's more about learning to, like, manage that relationship.
Exactly. It's about using it more mindfully, setting healthy boundaries.
Right.
So that it actually like enhances our lives and doesn't like dictate them.
Yeah.
And one of the most like powerful things you can do is this idea of digital minimalism.
Okay, I've heard that term thrown around.
Right.
But what does that actually look like?
So think of it like decluttering your physical space, but in like the digital realm.
Okay.
It's basically looking at all the digital clutter in your life and getting rid of it.
Okay.
Like unsubscribing from email newsletters you don't read anymore, deleting apps that you haven't used in forever, even unfollowing people on social media that, maybe don't make you feel so great.
So it's kind of like a digital detox.
Yeah.
But instead of going cold turkey, it's like making conscious choices about what you let in.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about being really intentional with your time and your attention.
Right.
So instead of just like, scrolling endlessly on social media, you can choose to engage with content that's actually interesting to you.
Right, that actually adds value.
Exactly. Or like connects you with people in a meaningful way.
Yeah, that makes sense. But in this world where we're like expected to be on all the time, how can people actually disconnect?
Right.
Like, wouldn't you be worried about missing something important?
That's where like setting those boundaries comes in.
Right.
And it can be as simple as like turning off notifications for certain apps.
Okay.
Or like designating specific times to check your email. Or even like creating tech-free zones in your house.
Okay.
Like, for example, what about making your bedroom a sanctuary where there's no devices allowed?
I've tried that.
Oh, yeah.
It really does make a difference with sleep.
Oh, for sure.
But what about during the day? Like when you're really in it, how do you deal with that feeling of just being like overwhelmed and wanting to unplug?
I think mindfulness practices can be so helpful in those moments.
Okay.
Even something as simple as taking a few deep breaths.
Right.
It can really help.
Yeah.
There are some really great apps out there, like, Calm Headspace.
Right.
They have guided meditations and stuff.
Okay.
And they can really help you just like manage anxiety and stress in the moment.
That's a good tip. What about people who are dealing with eye strain?
Oh, yeah.
Like from staring at a screen all day?
There's the 20-20-20 rule.
Okay, tell me about that.
So every 20 minutes, you look at something that's 20 feet away for 20 seconds.
Okay.
It's basically a little mini vacation for your eyes.
Okay, that's easy enough.
Right. And it helps prevent eye fatigue.
I like that.
I've also heard about this app called Forest.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Have you tried it?
I haven't.
But I love the idea.
It's so cool. It like gamifies productivity.
Yeah.
You basically grow a virtual tree while you're working.
Right.
And if you like pick up your phone or get distracted, the tree dies.
Oh, so it's like holding you accountable.
Exactly.
I like that.
Speaking of which, we actually asked our listeners
Oh, yeah.
on podcastOdyessy
Right.
to share their own tips
Okay.
for managing digital anxiety.
I love hearing from the listeners. I know, me too.
What did they say?
There were so many good ones.
Yeah.
But Sarah from Denver,
Wow.
she said she limits her social media to just 30 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And she said it's made a huge difference
Wow.
in her mood and productivity.
That's great.
It's a good example of like a really clear boundary.
Yeah, I like that.
Did you have any other favorites?
Yeah. What else? What else?
Mike from Toronto.
Okay.
He said he's replaced his like bedtime scrolling
Right.
with journaling,
Okay.
which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
He said it helps him like process his thoughts
Right.
before he goes to sleep.
So he can actually like shut off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then Priya from Mumbai,
Okay.
she uses noise canceling headphones to create like a focused work environment,
No, that's smart.
even though she's got like a busy household.
Right.
It's a really easy